On Thanksgiving Day, my small living room smelled like roasted turkey, cinnamon apple pie, and old pine wood. I was wiping my hands on my apron when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I peeked out the window and saw a black SUV roll into my modest driveway. The back door opened, and there he was, my son, Christopher. Tall, sharp-suited, and polished, just like every magazine cover I had seen him on lately. He stepped out, holding a bottle of wine, and his eyes scanned the house like it was some museum he hadn't visited in years. "Mom," he smiled, stepping toward the door before I could even open it. "Chris," I said, my voice catching in my throat. We hadn't seen each other in person in nearly 3 years. Phone calls were quick, messages were rare, and his assistant often answered for him. But today, of all days, he was here. I opened the door wide, and before I could think, he pulled me into a hug. "You smell like home," he said softly. I smiled through the sting of tears and patted his back. "And you smell like Wall Street." He laughed, the same boyish laugh I remembered from his teenage years. I stepped aside and let him in. He glanced around the tiny house, paint peeling in places, furniture worn and faded but clean. "I didn't think you'd come," I said, taking the wine from him and setting it on the counter. "I had to see you," he replied, taking off his coat. "Especially after what I did last week." I looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He chuckled and leaned against the old wooden table. "Did you like the lake house I gave you?" My heart paused. Lake house. He tilted his head. "You didn't check your mail, did you?" I frowned. "I check it every day." There was nothing except bills and those donation requests from the local animal shelter. Chris reached into his pocket and handed me a white envelope. It was crisp, sealed, and heavy. I opened it, confused, and inside was a deed, an official, notarized property deed with my name on it. The property address was a lakeside retreat in upstate New York, nearly $1 million property. I blinked several times and looked up at him. "You bought me a house?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He nodded. "A retirement home. A peaceful lakefront view, 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, a private dock. Everything you've always dreamed of. I figured it was time to give you something meaningful." I sat down, stunned. "But why now?" Chris ran a hand through his neatly styled hair. "Because I've been a fool, Mom. I've chased success so much that I forgot who got me there." That moment made me drop every single doubt I had been carrying over the years. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw something different: humility. "You were never a fool," I whispered. "You just got lost for a while." He smiled, but there was regret in his eyes. "I should have been there more," he said, "especially after Dad passed. You went through it all alone." I reached out and held his hand. "I had memories and I had your calls, though they were rare." He chuckled. "I deserve that." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the clock ticking above us, and the smell of food lingering in the air. "Come help me finish up," I said, pulling myself up. He rolled up his sleeves and followed me into the kitchen. It was surreal, seeing my millionaire son basting turkey and peeling potatoes. We talked about everything: his travels, his investments, the people he worked with, and then finally, we talked about the lake house. "I want you to see it," he said. "I'll go," I replied. "Just not tonight." After dinner, we sat by the fireplace. Chris had brought a special bottle of wine, something aged and French, and we sipped quietly. He told me he had been reconsidering everything in his life. "Do you remember when Dad took me fishing?" he asked. "All the time. That's why you had such a fascination with lakes." He nodded. "I want to bring that back. I want to slow down." I studied him for a moment. "You thinking of moving back?" He gave a small laugh. "Not quite yet, but I do want to visit more. Maybe start hosting the holidays." "That would be nice." Chris leaned back and looked up at the ceiling. "I've been feeling hollow, Mom. All the awards, the meetings, the penthouses, it doesn't mean anything if you're alone." I forgot what joy felt like until I walked into this house today. I felt a lump in my throat. "It's never too late to come home." He turned toward me. "Promise you'll go see the lake house tomorrow?" "I promise." The next morning after breakfast, he drove me there. The ride was quiet, peaceful. Fall had painted the landscape in orange and gold. When we arrived, I gasped. The house was perfect, clean lines, large windows overlooking the lake, a porch swing, and a fireplace inside. Everything I ever imagined. How did you know? I asked, walking through the hallway. I remembered all your stories. You always said you'd retire by a lake someday. I figured I owed you that. I touched the kitchen counter, granite. The cabinets were rustic and warm. There was a large picture window by the dining table overlooking the water. I turned to him with tears in my eyes. It's beautiful. He stepped closer. It's yours. I looked out the window again, heart full. Thank you. We spent the afternoon there, sitting on the dock, feeding ducks and talking. Chris looked more at ease than I had seen in years. He took off his shoes, rolled up his pants, and dipped his feet into the water. This is healing, he said. It always has been, I replied. In the following months, he kept his word. Chris came down every other weekend. Sometimes he brought friends, sometimes he came alone. And slowly, our relationship mended. He started making donations in Dad's name to local veteran homes. He even sponsored a scholarship fund at the high school he once went to. One evening in March, I walked out onto the porch of the lake house. Chris was sitting on the steps, sipping tea. You know, he said, I think I'll move out of the city next year. Really? I smiled. Yeah. Not here, not yet, but somewhere closer to you. I put a hand on his shoulder. I'd like that. He looked up at me, his eyes glistening. You gave me everything when I had nothing. You believed in me when I was reckless. This lake house, this is just a small part of what I owe you. I shook my head. You owe me nothing, Chris. Just be happy. He leaned his head against my arm. I think I finally am. That Thanksgiving started a new chapter in our lives. My son didn't just give me a house, he gave me back my family. He gave me time, love, and the peace that money alone could never buy. And in return, I gave him a piece of home he had forgotten he missed.